I have just created an insane ink stain on my duvet cover, and I'm not buying a new one. It's going to have to stay like that. I'm sorry. It is what it is. Hi, I'm Amaya, and these are the best three short stories that I've read this year so far. These are truthfully the best stories I've read so far this year, period. But they all do happen to be short stories. So if you frequently get into reading slumps like I do and you need some help getting out of it, this might be of service to you. I don't have a desktop. I don't have a laptop or an iPad or anything like that. So I did write all of my notes by hand. Um, I did write all of my notes by hand. So if you see me looking down at my handy dandy journal, I'm just reading my notes. That's all. Okay. I won't lie, this year so far has not been the best reading year for me in terms of quality. I feel like I have been reading a decent amount of books, but I haven't been loving them. Maybe it's because I suffer from this disease called pick up a book and start reading it without reading the synopsis at all because I hate spoilers and I hate knowing what a book is about before I read it. A little ironic, I do admit, because maybe if I would just read the synopsis, I'd probably like more of the books that I read, but just not going to do that. It's just fun to pick up a book and start reading it. I don't know, I've always done that since I was a child. Okay, the first book that I read, sorry, the first book on this list is Hotel Iris by Yoko Oegawa. It is the story of Mari, who is a 17-year-old girl working at her family hotel, which is now really just her mother's hotel. So her and her mother are working there along with someone else who is hired help. It's one other woman. So it's just three women working at this hotel. And 17-year-old Mari enters a sadomasochist relationship with a 67-year-old man who is a Russian translator. And throughout the entirety of the book, he is only referred to as the translator. He never gets a name. This is the second book I've read by Yoko Oegawa. The first book that I read by her was The Memory Police, and truly, I know this is controversial. I hated that book so much. I hated it. I dreaded finishing it. I dreaded getting through it to finish it. Yeah, I did not DNF it. I made it all the way through and it was rough. I didn't like that book at all, actually. I find that books that have endings that are open to interpretation are either loved or hated. But with this book in particular, I find that the only way to really end it would have been the ending that it got, which is an ending that is somewhat open to interpretation. And I love the ending very much. I actually got my boyfriend to read this book, and he hated that about the ending, but I thought it was the best way to end a book like this. I'm going to give you a brief little summary about the book. Mari is working at her mother's hotel by the sea. We learn very quickly that she has no father figures in her life. Both her father and grandfather have passed away, both of whom she has had a good relationship with, especially her father. You can sense the tension between Mari and her mother. She just has an overall lack of any kind of nurturing figure in her life. Her mother does not provide her with that sense of motherly love, um, and just stability and emotional connection there at all. One day at the hotel, a man, who we will later find out is the translator, is expelled from the hotel after a vulgar dispute with a sex worker he has hired. Mari hears this and is instantly allured and intrigued by his commanding and authoritative tone. She says that when he is degrading this sex worker, there is no sense of anger in his voice. Excuse me. There is no real anger or animosity in his voice, but there is a overall sense of power, which again she finds very alluring. This book is very fast paced, I would say, and very blunt, which I really appreciated. It is uncomfortable and odd and dark, and you should definitely look up any trigger warnings. Of course, this is a relationship between a 17-year-old girl and a 67-year-old man, so that is already uncomfortable on its own, but there are multiple themes of BDSM throughout this book as well. And yeah, I really like this book. I really wasn't expecting this from Yoko Egawa because if I'm not mistaken, this is like the only like sexual book she's ever written, but I could be wrong. I've only read The Memory Police, but I really, really did enjoy this one. I really did. And it is a short book. It is a short book, but I do believe it is the longest out of the three that I'm going to be talking about. So, next book. Next book. Foster by Claire Keegan. Foster by Claire Keegan is a story of a young girl who is sent to live with her foster parents on a farm in rural Ireland. She's unaware of when she will be returning home, but with these foster parents, who I believe we later find out are actually her aunt and uncle on her mother's side, if I'm not mistaken. Which I don't think is a spoiler. I could be wrong. Okay, so slight spoilers for this book. Slight spoilers. Um, and through living with these foster parents, she experiences great kindness and affection. And she then becomes aware that her own parents at home have been neglecting her all this time. We see this multiple times throughout the story without being super repetitive and still remaining very subtle, which I think is very impressive considering, again, how short this story is. Some examples of this is that when she first arrives with these foster parents, we find out that she has never experienced a warm bath. She drinks 6 cups of water on her first night with her foster parents, and she is incredibly filthy. Those are just some of the small things that kind of have an overall encompassing feeling of these people have shown me the utmost kindness that my own parents have never even considered showing me before. I really loved the atmosphere of this story. I found it very submersive. I again found it very realistic yet subtle for someone to experience this. I feel like a lot of people found this story surprisingly very mediocre, but maybe this is just speaking from personal experience as someone who maybe didn't realize that certain things were abusive until you move away from that environment and you tell people what you're going through and then they kind of just tell you like, "Hey, that's not right." I thought it was very well done and very beautiful in my opinion. Okay. Last short story. I'm on the same page. Last short story is The Ones Who Walk Away from Amalas by Ursula K. Le Guin. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. This is a classic. I feel like most people have, if not read this story, have heard of this story. I really wish that I read this story in school, but I didn't. I read it this year. Um, this is a arguably utopian society where the city of Amala, the citizens' happiness depend on the suffering of a single neglected child who presides and lives underneath the city streets. All of the citizens are, of course, made aware of this. And if this child is saved, then the utopia will collapse. That is kind of all that I wrote about that book, I think, because I just wanted to talk about it off of my head to the camera. So, one of the questions that I had while reading this book is, well, why does nobody just save the child? Like in the story, there are people who the story briefly mentions that everyone in the city is made aware that this child is presiding underneath the city and that this child's neglect and torment is entirely dependent on the happiness and utopia of the city, whatever. The book briefly speaks about people going to visit this child, like visit this child and watch them, and they instantly are appalled and repelled by the condition and the meekness of the child. I think the book describes that the child is even afraid of a mop that presides in the corner of the room, and they sit in this room staring at the wall surrounded by its own defecation, and people will view this child and will be so disgusted and repulsed by it, and they'll decide that they're going to leave the city of Amala. They're the ones who walk away from the city of Amala, but none of these people who leave ever takes the child with them. And I wonder if it's because it's one thing to walk away from something, but it's one thing to change something, and in taking that child away, now they are solely responsible for the unhappiness of everyone in this utopian society because they are the one actively making that decision. It kind of almost reminds me of that what's that train philosophy question they ask you where it's like, this could be entirely wrong. Let's say you're working on a train track, and the train track is currently on path to hit 10 people, but if you pull the lever you can instead save those 10 people, and instead hit one person. And it's the battle of numbers, and it's like, of course, hitting one person instead of 10 people is arguably better, right? You're killing less people. But then if you do that, then you actively are killing that one person instead of just letting fate take its course. All of these books, by the way, are beautifully written. I didn't so much like the writing in The Memory Police, but I thoroughly did enjoy the writing of Hotel Iris. Um, yeah, I really like those books. Here's to me enjoying more books. Hopefully, I'll read something really, really good next, and I can talk about that in detail. I really want to do book videos where I kind of essentially say the whole book and everything that happens in it, but I don't know, I haven't found a really good book to do that for yet. So, yeah, those are some good short stories to read if you're in a reading slump. And yeah, thank you so much for watching.